Ladies and gentlemen, spiritual healing from depression is not about denying pain, it's about finally understanding it. When the darkness settles in and everything feels heavy, it's easy to believe something is wrong with you, that you are broken, that your mind has turned against you. But what if this depression isn't a curse to be fought, but a message to be heard? What if it is the soul's way of calling you back to yourself, to God, and to the healing you've been avoiding? We live in a noisy world, always running, always comparing, always numbing. We distract ourselves from pain with endless scrolling, entertainment, and busyness, but your soul doesn't forget. Your soul keeps score. And when you've ignored yourself for too long, when you've buried your truth, suppressed your grief, silenced your anger, or hidden your shame, your spirit will begin to cry out. That cry often sounds like depression. But underneath the heaviness is something sacred, a divine invitation. You see, spiritual healing from depression is not about escaping the darkness. It's about walking through it with purpose. It's realizing that depression may not be a disease, but a deep encounter with your unlived life. The part of you that never felt safe to speak. The version of you that was never allowed to be real. That child within you who learned to survive by shutting down. Spiritual healing comes when we stop running and start listening. When we kneel before the silence, not in defeat but in surrender, and it is in that surrender that the voice of God speaks. Speak the word, Lord, because only the word has the power to pierce through the numbness and awaken the soul. The word doesn't shame you for feeling low. It doesn't label you. It reminds you that you are seen, that you are loved in your most broken state, that your pain is not too much for God. In fact, your pain is the very place where divine healing begins. The journey of spiritual healing from depression is deeply personal. It requires courage, honesty, and faith. Faith that the darkness is not your enemy. Faith that even this ache has a purpose. Faith that the God who sees you will not let you go. Sometimes healing looks like crying in prayer, finally allowing yourself to feel what you've buried for years. Sometimes it means forgiving others, and sometimes it means forgiving yourself for the time you lost, the people you hurt, or the parts of you that you once hated. This path doesn't promise instant relief, but it does promise transformation. Because when you walk with God through your depression, you don't just return to normal. You become new. You find yourself. You uncover truths that liberate you. You begin to live from a place of depth and compassion. You no longer run from your pain. You use it as fuel for purpose. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is God trying to show me?" And here's the miracle. When you stop resisting, when you allow your soul to break open before the Lord, light begins to pour in, slowly, gently, powerfully, not because you forced it, but because grace met you in your honesty. You don't need to carry the weight alone. You don't need to wear a mask for God. He sees you, all of you, and He's not ashamed. He is calling you not to fix yourself, but to return to Him so He can make you whole. Spiritual healing from depression is real. It is possible, and it starts the moment you stop denying your pain and start inviting God into it. You don't have depression. You are facing yourself. And when you face yourself with God, you walk not into despair, but into resurrection. Facing your inner self is one of the most difficult yet transformative journeys you will ever embark on. When the shadows creep in and the joy you once knew feels distant, it's easy to believe that you're broken or that something is deeply wrong within you. But what if you're not broken at all? What if the sadness, the silence, and the emotional weight you carry are not signs of illness, but signs that your soul is calling you inward, that you're not suffering from depression in the way you've been taught, but you're being invited into a sacred reckoning with yourself? The world teaches us to look outward for answers, fix the job, change the relationship, chase validation, medicate the pain, distract the mind, but the true healing, the deep, soul-level healing, doesn't begin out there. It begins when you have the courage to stop, sit in the silence, and turn inward. This is where the real work begins. This is where you begin facing your inner self. Facing your inner self means meeting the parts of you that have been hidden, shamed, or ignored. It means letting the buried pain rise, not to destroy you, but to free you. It means looking into the mirror and asking not, "What's wrong with me?" but "What have I forgotten about myself?" Because often, what feels like depression is actually a soul that's suffocating under layers of false identity, unprocessed wounds, and spiritual neglect. You were not created to live disconnected from your truth. Your emotions are not enemies, they are messengers. That anxiety you feel, that could be unspoken grief, that heaviness on your chest, it might be years of words you never said. That numbness, perhaps it's your heart protecting itself from more pain. When you face your inner self, you don't just look at the symptoms. You listen for the story beneath them. You allow God to shine His light into your darkest places, not to shame you, but to show you who you really are beyond the fear, beyond the failure, beyond the facade. There is divine power in honesty. The moment you say, "Lord, I'm tired of pretending, I want to see myself, I want to be free," is the moment the chains begin to break. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's resurrection in motion. Because when you face your inner self with the Word of God as your compass, you do not fall, you rise. This journey is not about perfection. It's about permission. The permission to feel, to cry, to ask hard questions, to wrestle with God like Jacob in the night until you come out changed. It's about holding space for yourself with the same grace that God extends to you daily. It's about letting go of the version of yourself that the world rewarded, but your soul rejected. And in that sacred surrender, healing begins. Real life transformation doesn't come through denial. It comes through divine confrontation. And when you stop running and start facing your inner self, you'll see that the part of you you've been avoiding is the very part of you that's most hungry for love, for truth, and for connection. There is no shame in the struggle, but there is breakthrough in the surrender. God is not waiting for a perfect version of you. He is waiting for the honest version, the one who's ready to stop hiding, the one who's brave enough to face their pain, not alone, but with divine guidance. The one who believes, deep down, that this suffering is not the end of the story. Facing your inner self is not the sign of a breakdown. It's the beginning of a breakthrough. So stop running, get still. Open your heart, speak the word, and let God begin the healing from the inside out. Because when you face yourself with faith, you don't just survive, you awaken. Faith-based mental health is not about denying the reality of emotional suffering. It's about reinterpreting that suffering through the lens of spiritual truth, divine love, and eternal hope. When you're lost in the heaviness of what you think is depression, the world tells you that you're broken, chemically imbalanced, or in need of fixing. But what if, instead of being broken, you are being called deeper? What if the numbness, the tears, the fatigue are not signs of failure, but invitations, sacred whispers from God Himself, beckoning you to finally face yourself? There is something profoundly spiritual about the human psyche. Your thoughts, emotions, and inner struggles are not isolated from your soul. They are rooted in it. And when you neglect your spiritual life, when you bury the truth of your pain, when you run from the mirror of your inner self, your soul begins to ache. That ache is what we often call depression. But faith-based mental health teaches us to look closer. It teaches us to recognize that we are not just mind and body, we are spirit, and that spirit, when wounded or silenced, cries out through the language of emotional distress. You don't have depression, you're facing yourself. That statement is not meant to deny real suffering, it is meant to reframe it. to reveal that perhaps what you call depression is actually your soul pleading for authenticity, for healing, and for truth. And when you begin to see your pain not as something to escape, but as something to understand, you begin the journey of true healing. Faith-based mental health does not treat emotions as enemies. It treats them as messengers, divine indicators of where healing is needed. God does not shame you for your sorrow. He does not turn away from your tears. In fact, Scripture tells us He collects every one of them. The Psalms are full of cries of anguish and confusion, but also declarations of faith in the middle of the darkness. That's the essence of faith-based healing. It doesn't wait for the storm to pass before speaking life. It speaks life * in the storm *. Many people have tried everything, medications, therapy, distractions, but still feel empty. Why? Because they've addressed the surface, but not the source. The source is spiritual, and faith-based mental health teaches that healing comes not just through coping, but through confrontation confronting the lies you've believed, the trauma you've buried, and the identity you've lost. That confrontation is painful, it feels like depression, but it's actually transformation, and this is where the power of the word comes in. When you begin to speak the word, Lord, into your pain, things begin to shift. You remind your soul who you really are, a child of God, not a prisoner of pain. You declare that your emotions are real, but they are not your master. You affirm that your identity is not found in how you feel, but in who God says you are. And slowly, the fog begins to lift. The darkness begins to lose its grip, because truth has entered. Faith-based mental health doesn't guarantee a life without suffering, but it offers a way through it, a path paved with purpose, guided by grace, and anchored in eternal love. It tells you that your pain has meaning, your story has value, and your healing is possible, not because you are strong, but because God is. So if you feel like giving up, don't. If you feel like your mind is collapsing under the weight, hold on. Because this isn't your ending, it's your invitation, an invitation to face yourself, to stop hiding, to walk through the valley not alone, but hand in hand with the one who created your soul and knows exactly how to restore it. You don't have depression, you're facing yourself, and when you do that with faith, you don't just recover, you rise. There comes a time in every person's life when the noise of the world grows silent and you are left alone with yourself. That moment can feel like depression. It can feel like emptiness, like heaviness pressing on your chest, like the loss of joy and the absence of hope. But what if that darkness is not depression as you've come to understand it? What if that darkness is the beginning of something sacred? What if you are not falling apart? You are awakening. The emotional awakening journey is not glamorous. It doesn't begin with light. It begins with shadows. It begins with sitting in the ache you've tried to escape for years. It begins with realizing that all the things you chased, success, validation, pleasure, never truly filled the void, and so life, in its divine wisdom, strips them away. You find yourself raw, exposed, and searching. That search is the beginning of awakening. That pain is not your end. It is your invitation. You are not broken. You are becoming. The emotional awakening journey is the process of remembering who you truly are beneath the layers of fear, shame, and conditioning. It is when your soul decides it can no longer pretend. It's when the masks crack and the truth begins to rise. Truth that has been waiting patiently for your attention. The sadness you feel, it's not weakness. It's the sacred grief of a soul that longs to be whole. This journey is not easy. In fact, it often feels like you are being undone. Old beliefs fall apart. Friendships shift. Dreams die. But this death is not destruction. It's resurrection in motion. You are being emptied so you can be filled again, not with illusion, but with truth. Not with noise, but with presence. You are learning to sit with yourself, to feel the emotions you buried, to hear the inner voice you silenced, to face the pain you thought would destroy you. And this is where God meets you. Not at the finish line, but right in the pit, right in the mess. When you cry out, "Lord, I don't know who I am anymore," His reply is not anger, it's compassion. He doesn't turn from your brokenness. He draws near to it. Because this is what divine love does. It enters the cave with you and lights the fire from within. You don't have depression. You're facing yourself. You're facing the little child within you who never felt seen. The teenager who learned to hide. The adult who became so strong they forgot how to feel. But now, finally, you're listening. You're holding space. You're letting yourself be human. And in that humility, healing begins. Emotional awakening isn't a straight line. Some days you'll feel alive. Other days you'll want to crawl back into the dark. But don't be discouraged. Awakening is messy. Transformation is disruptive. That's how you know it's real, because you are shedding what no longer serves you. You are peeling away the lies. You are standing face to face with your own soul, and you are choosing to stay. Let that be your strength. Not that you never fall apart, but that you return to yourself every time you do. That you choose truth over numbness, presence over distraction, courage over comfort. That you continue to walk the narrow path even when it hurts, even when it's unclear, because deep down you believe, no matter what, that there is something sacred on the other side, and there is. You were never meant to live in hiding. You were meant to awaken. You were meant to feel deeply, to love fully, to cry out to God and hear His voice thunder back with peace. This is not the end of your story. It's the first honest chapter. Don't run from it. Embrace it, let the journey unfold. Because when you commit to facing yourself, you step into the most powerful, divine healing of all. You don't need to be rescued. You need to awaken, and that's exactly what you're doing. There is a moment in every soul's journey when silence grows louder than noise, when distractions no longer satisfy, and the mirror of truth begins to reflect not just what you look like, but who you really are. That moment, though it may feel like depression, is often something far deeper. It is the beginning of healing through self-reflection. It is not an end, it is an awakening. When you're caught in what feels like depression, it's easy to believe something is wrong with you. The heaviness, the lack of motivation, the tears that fall without explanation, they seem like symptoms of illness. But what if, instead of being a sickness, this pain is actually a sacred teacher? What if the discomfort is your soul saying, "It's time to look within"? Healing through self-reflection begins when you stop numbing and start noticing. You begin to ask real questions. Why do I feel this way? What am I carrying that I haven't released? Who am I trying to please, and why am I so tired? You dig beneath the surface and begin to find layers. Old wounds, forgotten dreams, childhood fears, unmet needs. These are not flaws to fix. They are parts of your story that have been asking to be heard. This is not about judgment, it's about gentle truth. It's about turning your gaze inward not with condemnation, but with compassion. You look at yourself not to criticize, but to understand, and in that understanding, healing begins. Self-reflection is a spiritual act. It invites the divine into your most vulnerable spaces. When you dare to sit in silence and open your heart, God doesn't leave you alone with your pain. He meets you there with grace, with love, and with the power to restore. He shows you that you are not broken, you are becoming. He teaches you that your pain is not punishment, it is a portal to deeper peace. So many people spend their lives running from themselves. They chase status, people, pleasure, even religion, anything to avoid the stillness that brings them face to face with their true self. But the healing you long for will never come from avoiding the wound. It will only come when you stop and say, "Show me what I need to see, Lord. Heal what I didn't even know was hurting." Real self-reflection takes courage. It means admitting that some of your patterns are rooted in pain, that some of your relationships are born from wounds, that the mask you wear has become too heavy to carry, and it also means recognizing that you have the power, with God's help, to change, to release, to forgive, to rebuild. Healing through self-reflection isn't just about insight, it's about transformation. When you uncover the lies you've believed about yourself, you begin to replace them with truth. When you recognize the voice of shame, you silence it with love. When you see the child in you who was never validated, you offer them the acceptance they've always needed. This is divine healing. This is what it means to face yourself and rise. It's not depression, it's divine disruption. It's your soul saying, let's go deeper, let's come home. It's uncomfortable, yes, it's often messy, but it is sacred. Because when you begin to see yourself clearly, you begin to heal powerfully. So don't run, don't numb, don't call this your downfall, call it your becoming. Take time, breathe, write, pray, ask the hard questions and wait for the still, small voice that says, you are not alone in this, because you're not. Healing through self-reflection is one of the most faithful acts you can offer your soul. It is how you begin to align your outer life with your inner truth, and when that alignment comes, peace will follow, not the peace that the world gives, but the peace that surpasses all understanding. That is the promise, and that is your path. From a Christian perspective, what many call depression may sometimes be the soul's way of crying out for deeper truth. While we do not deny the reality of clinical depression or the importance of professional help, we also believe that there are moments in life where the darkness we feel is not just about mental health. It's a spiritual signal. It's not always a sickness of the mind. Sometimes it's a silence of the soul. It's not always depression. You may be facing the deepest, truest parts of yourself for the first time. In a world that teaches us to run from pain, distract ourselves from silence, and cover our insecurities with performance and possessions, we can forget how to simply be still . But Scripture tells us be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. This stillness can be terrifying when we're used to noise. When everything slows down, we begin to see our reflection clearly, and that's when many people begin to panic. The emptiness they feel isn't random. It's the absence of self-understanding. It's the ache of a soul that has been ignored. From a Christian viewpoint, facing yourself is often the first step towards spiritual healing. God allows us to go through wilderness seasons not to punish us, but to prepare us. He brings us to moments where nothing makes sense, so that we'll stop trying to control and finally surrender. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. This is the sacred invitation, not to medicate the silence, but to meditate in it, not to numb the pain, but to kneel in it, because the pain may not be the enemy. It may be the voice of the Holy Spirit calling you back home. Many in the Bible went through what today we'd call depression. Elijah sat under a tree and begged God to take his life. David wept until he had no strength left. Job cursed the day of his birth. Yet in every one of these stories, God did not leave them in their despair. He didn't scold their sadness. He spoke to it. He met them in it. And he walked them through it. The Christian perspective doesn't say you won't feel lost. It says you won't stay lost. It says that your valley of shadow is not your grave, but your classroom. You're not dying. You're deepening. You're being stripped of your false identity so you can receive your true one. Chosen, loved, and seen by the Father. You don't have depression. You're facing yourself. That may sound harsh to some, but for many it's a key to freedom. Because when you realize that your sorrow isn't always about something being wrong with you, but something rising within you, you start to ask different questions. Instead of what's wrong with me, you ask what is God trying to show me. That is the shift that leads to healing. Facing yourself means facing your past, your pain, your pride. It means letting the light of God shine into your darkest places, not to shame you, but to free you. It means you stop pretending and start confessing. You stop hiding and start healing. Asterisk, the truth will set you free. Asterisk John 8:32. If you feel empty, exhausted, or emotionally numb, don't be afraid. This could be your turning point, not a breakdown, but a breakthrough. Bring your heart to God. Sit with Him in the quiet. Let Him speak into the places you've been afraid to face, because He doesn't just want to fix your feelings. He wants to restore your soul, and He will, because He already sees you. He already loves you, and the path to healing isn't somewhere outside of you. It begins the moment you stop running and turn within. That's where you'll find Him waiting. There are moments in life when everything feels heavy. When the colors of the world fade, the joy disappears, and we begin to wonder what's wrong with us. Many call it depression, and for some, it truly is a clinical struggle that needs compassionate care. But for others, there's a deeper spiritual truth unfolding. It's not depression. It's the beginning of facing yourself. It's the sacred call to shadow work, and through it, divine healing begins. Shadow work is the process of confronting the parts of yourself you've denied, suppressed, or forgotten. It's when the masks fall away and you come face to face with your hidden fears, your unhealed wounds, your inner critic. It's uncomfortable, often painful, but it's not punishment, it's transformation, because what you are truly doing is allowing light to enter the darkest corners of your being. You're not breaking down, you're waking up. The shadow holds the stories we've buried, the trauma we didn't process, the shame we tried to ignore, the habits we formed to protect ourselves from pain. At first, it looks like weakness or emotional numbness. But when you lean in, when you stop running from it, you begin to realize the shadow isn't your enemy. It's your unhealed self calling out for grace. This is where divine healing enters, because God doesn't just heal what's visible. He heals what's hidden. When you begin the process of shadow work, you're not walking alone, you're walking with the Spirit. In Scripture, God consistently draws near to the brokenhearted. He doesn't recoil from your shadow, He redeems it. The process is slow, deliberate, and holy. You begin to ask questions like, why do I react this way? Why does this situation trigger me? What am I really afraid of? Each answer brings you closer to your truth, and closer to divine healing. The Lord meets you in these honest moments, not with judgment, but with revelation. Asterisk, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties. Asterisk Psalm 139:23. Through shadow work, you begin to notice the beliefs that have shaped your life. I'm not enough. I must earn love. I must stay silent to stay safe. And as these beliefs come into awareness, the healing begins. Because once something is seen, it can be surrendered. And once it is surrendered, it can be transformed. Divine healing doesn't always come in a single moment. Sometimes it comes in layers, in daily surrender, in choosing to show up for yourself and your healing with grace. Some days you'll feel progress. Other days you'll feel like you've gone backward, but through it all, God remains faithful. He who began a good work in you will carry it to completion. Shadow work is not the opposite of faith, it is the application of it. It's choosing to believe that even your pain has purpose, that even your darkness is not beyond the reach of light, that even your brokenness is a place where God can build something beautiful. This is not depression. This is a sacred process of self-reclamation, and it's worth every tear, every prayer, every moment of courage. You don't have to be afraid of your shadow. You were never meant to fight it alone. The Spirit of God is with you, guiding you, comforting you, and healing you from the inside out. So when you feel like giving up, remember, you're not lost, you're being led. You're not broken, you're being rebuilt. And the shadow you're facing is not a sign of your failure. It's the doorway to your freedom. Walk through it. Healing is waiting. There comes a time when the pain you carry feels like too much, too sharp, too heavy, too endless. You sit alone, consumed by emotions you can't name, haunted by questions you can't answer. You may think you're lost in depression, but what if that pain is not a curse, but a calling? What if the ache in your soul is not a sign that you're broken, but that something deeper within you is waking up? This isn't just suffering. It's the beginning of transforming pain into purpose. Pain often arrives in disguise. It comes as heartbreak, loss, confusion, fear, or abandonment. It whispers lies, that you're not enough, that you've failed, that you'll always feel this way. But hidden beneath that anguish is a sacred invitation. To grow, to awaken, to rise. You're not falling apart. You're shedding what no longer serves you. What feels like depression may be the divine confrontation with your true self. You're not sick, you're being summoned. The world tells you to hide your pain, put on a smile, keep moving, but healing doesn't happen in hiding. It begins the moment you face yourself. When you stop blaming others, when you stop running from your memories, when you sit in silence and say, "Lord, show me who I really am." That's where purpose is born. The word says, asterisk, He heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds. Asterisk Psalm 147, 3. God doesn't waste wounds. He uses them to create warriors. Think about the people you admire most, not the ones who had it easy, but the ones who survived, the ones who went through fire and came out refined. Their greatness didn't come from avoiding pain. It came from facing it, feeling it, and using it. Pain became the platform for their purpose. That can be your story too, your heartbreak. It can teach you how to love more deeply. Your rejection, it can lead you to self-worth that isn't dependent on others. Your failure, it can redirect you to the path you were truly made for. Every scar can become sacred if you allow God to breathe purpose into it. But here's the truth. This process is not easy. Facing yourself hurts, healing hurts, growth hurts, but you have to go through the pain to get to the purpose. You must dig through the dirt to find the gold, and that requires faith. Faith that there's more to your story than this chapter. Faith that God's plan for you still stands even when you feel stuck. Faith that even your lowest moment can be the seed of your greatest transformation. Pain is a powerful teacher. It strips away illusions. It forces honesty. It humbles the ego, and when you surrender it to God, it becomes a tool for His glory. What you thought would destroy you, He can use to deliver others. What you thought would end you, He can use to elevate you. Asterisk. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. Asterisk Romans 8:28. So don't hide your wounds. Don't drown in shame. Don't let the enemy convince you that your story ends in sadness. You are not in depression. You are in transformation. You are facing yourself, and in doing so, you are finding your power. You are being refined for a reason greater than yourself. Let the pain speak, but don't let it define you. Let it teach you, but don't let it trap you. Use it. Let it sharpen your purpose. Let it anchor your faith. Let it turn you into someone who can say to others, "I've been there, and I found my way out." Because you will. And when you do, your story will not be about how much you suffered. It will be about how you turned that suffering into service, into strength, into something sacred. This is the moment pain becomes purpose. This is the beginning of your rise.